Hello, Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
80-Bit Pod Smash,
where gaming goes to grab a beer. We are your hosts.
Hold on. You hear that?
I did.
You hear me pouring my beer?
I like that.
I'll talk about what I'm pouring it into in just a second. We are your hosts,
Yes.
Penguin and Termite. I am Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's right, and tonight we are doing one of our series is called Developer Profiles, where we talk about a developer, their history, what games they've put out, and what their pedigree is. And tonight we are doing in honor of the release of CyberPunk 2077 that has been delayed.
Boo!
We are not doing it in honor of the delay, but we decided to slot this episode in because we thought the game was coming out this week, but it is for CyberPunk 2077. We are doing a developer profile on the developer for that game, CD Projekt Red. As you have talked about, it is a Polish developer. You've probably more commonly heard it as Projekt, and it's the same word. It's just Polish. Poland, they pronounce it Projekt, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, CD Projekt Red is the developer we are talking about tonight. But before we get too far into that discussion, what are you drinking? We are where gaming goes to grab a beer. So what are you drinking?
I am drinking the other brand new Dogfish Head beer released this year that I've never had, called Costumes in Karaoke. It is an amazing beer. It is stupid good, as Dogfish Head continues to be, just nailing it. This is an imperial cream ale with turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, star anise, oats, cardamom with vanilla beans added, and it is brewed and bottled by Dogfish Head. So this is almost a dessert, but out the heavy sugar that comes with it.
Nice.
A cream ale makes it ridiculously smooth, but yet it's imperial, so it's boozy. It's 8%. The ginger, cardamom, star anise give it that, like, not bad licorice kind of back overtones, and the cinnamon, of course, makes it sweet with the vanilla and the ginger all rounded out. So it's very well balanced. It's not see-through at all. It's thick-bodied, and it's delicious. This is just awesome.
Very nice. I am drinking my boring blonde ale Rider number 8s from Aldi. However, I did decide to switch it up so I'd have something to talk about. I do wish sometimes that we were a video podcast as well, because I wish you guys could see what I am drinking this out of. But last year around this time, actually, I've had this thing for a year and I haven't done anything with it. But I was in a wedding. I was a groomsman in a wedding, and the groomsman gifts, it is often customary to get your groomsmen all gifts, and the gifts that were given to the groomsmen for this particular wedding were ram's horn mugs.
Oh, you're using it. Nice.
So finally using my ram's horn. I haven't used it in a year, and this blonde ale is perfect for it because it's frothy, it's foamy, it's yellow, so it kind of looks like mead. Even though it's a beer, it just looks like something I'm looking at it right now, and I'm like, this looks like something a Viking would be drinking, and this looks like something a Viking would be drinking out of. And I gotta say, it adds something to the experience. Like, this beer was kind of meh drinking it out of a can, but drinking it out of a ram's horn mug is just sublime.
It just made it that much better.
It does. It goes, maybe because it frothed up a little bit as I was pouring it, so it was just like drinking this light, crisp, frothy thing and beverage. And I don't know, maybe I can taste it. Maybe I'm just tasting a little bit of the ram's horn, but I like it. It's good. It's good stuff. So get you a ram's horn, guys. This is awesome.
I love it. That sounds great.
As a side note, I really want. I know that you have them. I know that a lot of my friends have collected like various glassworks, whatever you want to call them, mugs or growlers or Steiners, just things that we've collected and just never drank out of before.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's never really, when you're at home hanging out, you're just going to drink it either out of the can or you're going to drink it one of your pint glasses. And when you have friends over, usually it's like, let's be classy and drink out of these things. And you always think in your head when you get these things, is you're hyped and you're excited for whatever brand it is. You're like, man, like, I can't wait to like drink this at an Oktoberfest celebration or something. But then it never happens. You never do those things. So I know I have I want to throw a party where it's like, bring your weirdest, craziest mugs or things that you've collected and wanted to drink, and we'll just get a keg or something and just everyone bring your own cup, your own mug,
yes,
or whatever, or mugs, and go ham, have fun, enjoy it.
My wife and I have Wizarding World of Harry Potter like steins of Ravenclaw and Gryffindor that have dust in them because we've never actually drank out of them. And you might not be able to or like supposed to because they could be just decorative, but they're made out of what I could drink out of. I'd drink out of that.
Hand wash it, dude. You can always hand wash it. Yeah, I've got that.
Yeah.
I've got a Steiner from when I used to work at a restaurant and they threw a Oktoberfest celebration. I have this like really cool looking porcelain Steiner, and I've always wanted to drink something out of it. I've got some even just some growlers that I've never like filled things up with, and so it would be fun.
I love it. You don't even have to get a keg. Actually, I have like 3 growlers. I could just we could all just fill our growlers. Go up to your cabinet and just grab however many growlers you have. Just bring them all to one event and put them in the fridge. Yeah. And then we have our bring your weird glass drinkware with it, and we just drink all day long.
That'd be great.
And play Smash and not spread COVID.
Yes. I would think like a fall event where we could like play Can Jam or something out in the yard.
Oh, stop.
It'd be blast.
Next year.
Yeah, for real.
Let's get vaccinated first.
For sure. Yep. All right. So normally this section would be taken up by news. This is just a casual reminder that we no longer do news on our show. Instead, we have a weekly live stream where we do that. So you can check that out tonight at 8 o'clock Monday night. And if you want to catch up on some of the other ones we've done, talked about news from the previous weeks, you can check those out on YouTube, where they are uploaded usually the day or within the week afterwards. You can also usually check them out. If you go to twitch.tv, you'll probably see some of the more recent ones in recaps as well. So all kinds of places where you can check out. We do still talk about the news and the goings-ons in the gaming industry and give our hot takes on them, but we just do it in a different show now. So that way we can make more time for the actual conversations about our topics in this show.
Good segue into telling our audience and pointing them in the right direction where they can find all of these things that we're talking about. The best place for you to start is 80bitpodsmash.com, 80bitpodsmash.com. That's our landing website. There are links to everything. There are links to all of our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Reddit. There are links to all of the podcast platforms, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, as well as links to our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash, links to our Discord channel where you can interact with us, and the link to our YouTube page because we're not popular enough to have an actual YouTube/Penguin and Termite yet. And that can change because of you and your awesomeness. So please go to Apple Podcasts and give us a review where we will read them on the show, regardless of whether they're family friendly or not. We may have to censor them, whether they're good, scathing, praising, waxing eloquently, or just be honest. 5 stars, 1 star, it doesn't matter. We will read it on the show, and there is none for this week. We had one back in August, and we've been waiting ever since to find yet another review. So please go online and review us. Follow us on the social media platforms so you can be made aware of where we are when we go live and follow our content. That's our housekeeping. So without that in the way, what is next?
Next is time for
doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Favorite things. A little bit or segment. Something we're digging this week. Something as deep and meaningful as an interaction with our family or shallow as a perfectly popped bag of popcorn. Something we can share with each other that we are digging this week.
Yes, and in hopes that it may inspire you to go out and find your next favorite thing that is either similar or maybe the exact same thing if it is something that is eminently shareable. All right, so I'll start. My favorite thing this past week probably is going to end up being the first episode of The Mandalorian.
Yes!
Season 2.
Oh my gosh, it was so good.
Watch it? It was good. It was solid.
Yes.
It was very space western, and I won't spoil anything, but Timothy Oliphant, the actor who featured in it, the side character who featured in it, he was great. He was just phenomenal. He's always a phenomenal performer, and he was perfect. I saw someone on Facebook, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I saw something on Facebook, a meme that was posted that was like, The Mandalorian is a better space western than Firefly for one reason, season 2. And I was like, ooh, ow, that stings.
Ooh,
it stings. Yep. And it's not wrong. However, I would say that that's yet to be proven. They could crap the bed with season 2, but it's off to a really good start. So it was a very good episode. It just reminded me, I was like, oh man, I wish Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau had done the sequel trilogy. We would have gotten a much better sequel trilogy had those two guys been at the helm. There's an alternate universe out there somewhere where those two guys directed. Everything else in our universe is the same, but those two guys directed the sequel trilogy, and it was amazing. Maybe also there was no coronavirus.
Not turning this into a Star Wars podcast, but watching The Mandalorian Season 2 has inspired my wife and I to watch The Last Jedi again. And the story behind that is we tried to watch all 8 movies before 9 dropped, and we didn't get to 8. We only got through the first 7, and then we had to go see 9 in theaters. So now we're circling back to get 8 in again, The Last Jedi. And the more I watch that movie, dude, the more I love it. I love that movie so much, and it just has more depth and more... I know you hate it. Most of the internet hates it.
Wait, are you talking about... Which one are you talking about? I liked The Last Jedi. Yeah, The Last Jedi I liked. I am of the unpopular opinion that The Last Jedi was an excellent movie.
Thank you.
What Rian Johnson was trying to do was good. There were some things I had problems with 8, but overall, I loved what Rian Johnson was trying to do. My problems with the sequel trilogy... Again, not to turn this into a Star Wars podcast. This is the last I'll wrap up and say. My problem, if there's one person I can say who ruined the Star Wars sequels, it was not J.J. Abrams. It was not Rian Johnson. It was not Colin Trevorrow. It's Kathleen Kennedy. She's the producer. She's the Disney exec that's in charge of Lucasfilm, and it's her decision-making ultimately that is to blame for what I consider to be the biggest failures, because J.J. Abrams is known for starting stuff and making all these cool, interesting threads, and then like letting other people answer. Like he asks all these questions: who's Rey's parents? Who's, what's the story with what's going on with Luke Skywalker? Why is Luke Skywalker not involved? He asks all these questions and then expects other people to answer them. So Rian Johnson just took those things and was like, it doesn't matter. I'm doing what I want to do with them, and I thought that was great. I really liked how he was trying to reinvent the Star Wars ethos. But because he challenged the Star Wars ethos, it was not well received. The problem is just the idea of they tried to treat Star Wars like they treat Marvel, where they can bring other directors in and have those directors like play off each other's strengths. Star Wars doesn't work like that. It's always been under the single unified vision of one person. So they should have just put it under the single. If J.J. Abrams wanted to tell these interesting stories, these interesting questions, J.J. Abrams should have directed the whole dang thing. So Jon Favreau apparently approached them and said he threw his hat in to be the director of the sequel trilogy, and they turned him down. I think that was a mistake, because The Mandalorian is so freaking good, and Jon Favreau would have done so good with the sequel trilogy as well, had he gotten the chance to direct it.
Yep. I'm super excited to watch Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker, for the second time. I've only ever seen it once in theaters since it came out. And I'm dying to watch it again. I need to see that movie again. And so we're getting there. That's why I watched
that one.
Episode
I disliked. That one I hated.
Right. I did not hate it, and I expect to like it more when I watch it, but we'll see. Who knows?
Cool.
My favorite thing this week, since we're doing favorite things, is
Star Wars.
A very shallow thing. I loved The Mandalorian as well, but that was not my favorite thing. My very favorite thing this week was the extra large mouse pad that I purchased for my work from home desk area.
Nice.
My entire space that I have my hands on right now is covered in mouse pad, and it is incredible. And I had to buy it because I have 3 computers on this desk, and one of the mice did not work with the mouse pad I had prior. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get a giant mouse pad that covers this whole space. And
it's funny to me that there is such a thing exists. I'm not surprised, but I am also immensely pleased that you were able to find something that's basically just like a tablecloth that is mouse pad.
It's not quite a tablecloth, but it's like 3 feet long and 2 feet deep. So it covers like a giant. My working space is mouse pad. It's awesome. So it like dampens. Like I can put stuff. I'm tapping the table, and it's all muted. It feels nice. I can lay something here. It doesn't slide all over the place. And then the mice that I have multiple mice because I have multiple computers. They're all here. They have space for them. It's very comfortable to rest my hands and arms on when I'm typing. So I love it. And it was only $18 for this massive gaming mouse pad. So if you're in the market and you're working from home and you think, man, a mouse pad would change my entire perception of how I work from home, and go do that. Go get it. It's awesome.
Nice.
That's my favorite thing.
Fantastic. All right. That's favorite things, which leads us to our final segment before we talk about CD Projekt Red. and that is DLC, short for downloadable content. It is a segment of our show where we have a conversation you wouldn't normally have about video games that's meant to be fun and get your brains percolated before we talk about our main topic. It may be related, it may not. This one's very loosely related, and guys, it might get a little weird to this week.
I like weird. I love weird.
So we're going to get into a little Man Crush Monday action here. Ooh. And so again, loosely related to the idea of CD Projekt Red, but I was inspired, and I was thinking about Henry Cavill today, who is the actor who played Geralt of Rivia, the main character in the Witcher franchise, the video games that were made by CD Projekt Red, but also the main character of the Netflix show based off of the novels, The Witcher. And I gotta say, I was not a big Henry Cavill fan when I saw Man of Steel. I thought, okay, all right, he's a fine enough Superman, but I didn't love Man of Steel. But I loved him in The Witcher, and I've become quite the fan of Henry Cavill. So DLC, with all that in mind, DLC for the day is, what video game character would you like to see Henry Cavill play next?
Ah. You're
gonna say Solid Snake, aren't you? I knew it.
I mean, that has that ban on Termite talking about Metal Gear Solid been lifted? I mean, that's
this is a
I'll give you another one.
No, this is good. No, this is good though, because I honestly, the words came out of my mouth, and the very first image that came into my mind was Henry Cavill as Solid Snake, especially like Phantom Pain, Metal Gear Solid 5 Solid Snake.
Yes.
He would look like, give him a little bit of scruff. Yeah, no, I can see it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's totally that scruff, like military, hardened, battle-ridden, like man. That's also like chiseled body that can do the stealth moves and all of the hoisting yourself up onto stuff and the ridiculous like Halo jumps and surviving in the woods, whatever Solid Snake does. Yeah. There's so many things throughout the games that he does. Like Henry Cavill is definitely the person that has the physique and the look and the ability to act just like Solid Snake. Mm-hmm. Can I give you?
You can give
my
me
my B choice.
You can give me B choice. Yeah.
Oh, what was his name? Crap. Give me 2 seconds.
Well, I got one while you're thinking about it. I got I think Pedro Pascal, speaking of the Mandalorian, Pedro Pascal, who plays the titular Mandalorian, he's proved that a talented and skilled actor can do a lot with their voice and their physical acting alone. So another character a video game character who's cased in armor that you don't see ever in the games, that would be embodied very well, I think, by Henry Cavill and voiced very well by Henry Cavill, Master Chief.
Yes!
I think Henry Cavill as Master Chief in a Halo movie or a Halo TV show would be awesome, because he's tall. That's what makes him a great Superman. That's what makes him a great Geralt, is he just towers over all of the other characters, and that's that's what Spartans are supposed to be. They're like genetically modified, and just like you want Master in all those cinematics of the game, you see him just towering over all the other Marines. Like I think that Henry Cavill like walking around in Master Chief armor would be pretty sweet. That
would be perfect. Yeah, I like it a lot. I love it. And that rumored Halo movie show has just been all over the place. They need to get on that. My B choice was Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah, I can see it.
I feel like Henry Cavill would be perfect. Get a goatee going, put a cowboy hat on him, grow his hair out like he does with Geralt, but not as long, dye it black, and you have an amazing Western.
I just want to see him in a Western. Yeah, man. Like Henry Cavill in like a button-up shirt and a Stetson is like... I'm a little aroused right now. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little flustered. I'm blushing.
We are a family-friendly podcast, so parents, if you want to describe to your children what that meant, we're sorry.
Is a perfectly adequate word for not that kind of attraction as well. I'm just blushing, okay? I'm blushing a little bit at the idea of Henry Cavill in a Stetson. I'm with you. Arthur Morgan. Let's do it.
Yeah. Man, I'm dying to play that game again.
Yeah, me too, man. But it's so long.
Yep.
It takes up so much hard drive space, but like, you know, we've talked before about how like when you get to a certain time of year where you played certain games, you start to like paying for them, and that's one that I'm paying for.
2 years ago, right now.
The Redemption, I can't believe it's been 2 years. Holy crap!
I know. Yeah,
good game. All right. Well, that is our crushing hard on Henry Cavill DLC for the day. Which leads us to what you all are here for, which is a developer profile on CD Projekt Red. So we'll start with the basics. Who are they? What games are they known for? And what is their story?
We are going to butcher all of their names because we don't know how to speak Polish.
We are so
we apologize.
Sorry. Polish. Yep. Anyone out there who is a Polish listener or of Polish descent, massive apology for our butchering of these names.
The information that we are going to convey is mostly found at Wikipedia for just the history knowledge. Of course, we're going to augment that with our own experiences and knowledge of the video game industry as we walk through this developer and profile them. So where are they? Who are they? What games are they known for? What's their story and their history? They were founded in 1994 by Marcin Iwinski and Michael Kinski as Polish localization company. Yeah, a Polish localization company. Now, we did an entire episode about what localization in video games looks like. You can go check that out. Just Google 80-bit Pod Smash localization and you'll find it. But their name, they founded in 1994, was CD Projekt. So Red didn't exist in their name.
They were the CD Projekt. Basically, they were taking... So a little bit of like further elaboration on their background that I was reading is that before they decided to go into localization together, Poland was still a part of the Eastern Bloc for for pretty much all the 1980s, so they didn't really have video games in Poland. So these guys were like pirating games and then like downloading them to CDs and selling them in like the market, like you would go to Istanbul and find like The Dark Knight. Someone had pirated The Dark Knight, before that came out on DVD. Like all those, pirated movies you can find overseas. That's what these guys were basically doing for video games for Poland and then selling them. So when it became legal after the Soviet Union fell and when it became legal to start selling games, they founded the CD Projekt, which was to basically translate and localize games and bring them over to Poland, bring them into Poland and introduce the Polish population to games that were previously illegal to do. So pretty cool.
What was interesting about that was it was definitely piracy, but it wasn't illegal. Poland was still a communist country at the time. Copyright law didn't exist there.
That's true, yeah.
So they didn't really do anything illegal. They were just bringing video games to their country. It would have
been illegal for the West if they, obviously, like if they tried to sell them in the West, but because they were selling them in Poland locally, yeah, you're right. It wasn't illegal. They would not have been prosecuted by their government. They would have been prosecuted by our government or by Japan's government, but not ours, which is, pretty interesting. So they worked on localization. Their biggest partnership was with BioWare, Interplay and BioWare, in order to localize the Baldur's Gate. I guess Baldur's Gate 1. But I think they would eventually do the Baldur's Gate franchise. I'm not quite sure what other games they localized. They probably did a bunch. But again, as a reminder, localization is basically at a very, very surface level. It's translating the game, but a lot more goes into it. You pretty much scrub the game for, try to make references that would make sense in one country. You try to make them make sense in another country. So there's a lot of writing that goes into it. They would eventually partner with Interplay again, with that relationship again, for Dark Alliance, and specifically in order to port it on the PC, which is how they kind of started to get their chops with development as well, because they actually had to program it for the PC for the port and actually get their hands wet with that.
Interestingly enough, that game was canceled and the company decided to reuse the code for their own game. Yep. Taking their piracy and their development experience to become The Witcher. The first one. Which was a game based on the works of Andrzej Sapkowski.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And they bought that IP from Andrzej Sapkowski for something stupidly cheap. And in that agreement, one fee up front. And in that agreement, that was it. Like, you get all the IP of The Witcher for this basic amount of money. And later would become this crazy controversy that he was coming back for royalties because of the success of The Witcher 3.
15 years later, exactly. He'd come back a little bit less than 15 years, like 12 years later. He'd come back because they were making millions of dollars off of his work, but he sold it to them in the first place because video games are a dumb industry and no one's going to buy it. That wasn't exactly his quote. I don't quote. I am paraphrasing there. But yes, he basically was like, again, because he sold it in 2002. I think the video game industry was booming in 2002, but all right, Andres, like whatever. Like, I suppose he just had no faith in the video game industry to be a prolific medium to tell his stories. So they acquired the rights in 2002, and they founded CD Projekt Red as their development arm in order to make the game, which makes me wonder. I wonder if they are still localizing games as CD Projekt.
They are, and I will tell you how they're doing that. That's a great way. That's a good segue. So they're also the owner-operators of goodoldgames.com.
That's right.
It's GOG.com. These, and what CD Projekt Red does with this whole subsidiary, this separate company, but still under the same umbrella, they go and they reverse engineer old games and make them work on modern computers.
That's amazing.
And they don't just get the code and make it work. They get the instruction booklets, they get scans, they get soundtracks, they get all the extra content that goes around them, and they're all DRM free. So when you buy them, you get all of the stuff that comes with it, and you don't have to worry about a Steam code or any like origin code. Like you can get those things, but you own all of the rights to it, and there's no checks. So they're all DRM free, and you can it's all digital. It's fantastic, and it's almost like this love note to video game archival like history, or like stuff that we're trying to preserve and can propagate old games throughout the world. And I love it. And that's all because like CD Projekt Red has this very young, scrappy, yes, I'm quoting Hamilton, mentality about like they've always been against DRM, digital rights management. You said they started with a piracy company, and now they have the game distribution company of GOG. And so they have this whole philosophy about the gamer comes first, and they refuse to work with publishers, and they refused like Electronic Arts offers, and they don't work with others. Like they continue to fight for their own independence. They just operate completely on their own, and they focus on the development of role-playing games, and they just do what they do. And they followed this model of kind of like Rockstar Games, where they focus on one title, one big title. Right now they're working on CyberPunk 2077. It was supposed to come out this week, but it's not. And like that's it. There's no multiple projects in their arsenal. It's just one thing.
Yep.
They're a very unique company, and I love that we're doing a deep dive on them.
For sure, yeah. And so again, kind of roll back to 2002 after they had acquired the rights and founded CD Projekt Red. They started to work making the game. The development was actually pretty fraught. Just a casual read through of Wikipedia, there are things like they started trying to make it like a top-down isometric Dark Alliance / Diablo style game. And then they abandoned that about a year later and started from scratch. The budget eventually started to exceed the expectation. There was trouble translating the game's text into English, ironically, for a localization company. But eventually the game came out in 2007 and was favorably received. Favorably received enough that they began immediately working on The Witcher 2, Assassins and Kings, which came out in 2011. So crazy that game is relatively young. I keep forgetting that a lot of these games, first of all, I keep forgetting that so much time has passed. I think 2011, I'm like, yeah, that was like last year, right? No.
Right, 9 years ago.
A decade ago, almost, yeah. So The Witcher 2 came out in 2011, also did well. And they almost again immediately began working on The Witcher 3. And then I think in tandem to The Witcher 3, they started working on Cyberpunk 2077 alongside that. That was one where they started just do a tandem development. But The Witcher 3 came out in 2015 and had its own set of delays, but it finally came out in 2015 and it received widespread praise, so much so that it basically solidified CD Projekt Red's status and pedigree for the next half decade leading up to now. So they are a big enough name for us to talk about, but it's so interesting. They like you said, they are unique because that's basically it. I mean, they released some spin-off games, but all in The Witcher. Like a full list of their games is Witchers 1 and 2, Witcher Adventure Game, which is an Android thing that they co-developed, Witcher Battle Arena, which is also a cell phone game that they co-developed, Witcher 3 and its 2 expansions, Gwent, which is another, it's on multiple platforms, but it's the Gwent card game from The Witcher 3. They made an actual game out of it. And then Thronebreaker, The Witcher's Tale, which was supposed to be a standalone, or it is a standalone single-player game that was supposed to be included in the Gwent game. And then Cyberpunk. So Cyberpunk is a game coming out, but again, it's all Witcher stuff, and it's all, aside from their main titles, their main like solid releases are just these 3 Witcher games, and that's all they've done. So almost all the other developer profiles we've done, they've had multiple titles. Even Sucker Punch, which we just did a month or so ago, 2 months ago. Gosh, time has no meaning. You're right.
Right.
Even Sucker Punch, which only had like a handful of titles, it's still nothing. It still had multiple IPs. CD Projekt Red really is truly unique in that they've done one thing, and this truly is their first new IP. It's not only a brand new IP, but it is their first break from what they've done. So it's very interesting. Very interesting there. Cyberpunk 2077, by the way, is not a completely new IP in the sense of something they've come up with. It is based off of a role-playing game that was made in the 80s that is basically Dungeons and Dragons, a tabletop role-playing game that's basically Dungeons and Dragons but set in a cyberpunk genre. Whew.
Yep, that's them.
That's Cyberpunk. That's who they are. That's what they do. So let's get personal and talk about what of these games, which there aren't many, which Cyberpunk or which CD Projekt Red game is your favorite?
The only one I've played, which is The Witcher 3. But that's the shallow answer. That's the quick answer. The real answer is like I've enjoyed the Baldur's Gate games over the years. I played Icewind Dale. I've dabbled in Dark Alliance. They're amazing. They're super fun. They're like, they have that flavor that BioWare did so well with Dragon Age. And they have that just like that deep, fantastical lore that you get with The Witcher, and the combat's good and solid and it's fun, and there's an engaging lore and story and character development and skill trees and customizations, almost like what you would get in an Elder Scrolls game. Like it's very similar to that kind of feel and style. So what is my favorite? Of course, it's The Witcher 3, because I fell in love with that game. In fact, that game was transformational in my entire opinion of open world video games. I did not enjoy an Elder Scrolls game until after I had played The Witcher 3. It almost took the training that Witcher 3 did for me to teach me what looting and crafting and all of the things that they did right. The map, the waypoints, how compelling and engaging the side quests were, how deep they were. They weren't just these extra tack on things, so you didn't feel overwhelmed by them like I did in Skyrim when I first played it, or in Oblivion when I played it, and even Morrowind back in the day. Yeah, I mean, that's by far The Witcher 3. Everything has so much more depth to it. Nothing is surface. Like, you go up to someone and they're like, oh my gosh, my kid is trapped in this house that's going to be some... And you go and there's like this deep story about what is attacking this child, what the child's going through, why there's... Like, it's so much more deep than just the surface. And the show on Netflix conveys that perfectly. It's never just a monster. It's never just, oh, there's a werewolf that's attacking our village. It turns out that werewolf is like someone from the village who was like involved in some relationship with something, was ostracized.
There was an affair.
And, like,
it was
sought
like an
out.
affair, and you could, and like, so like the wife was killed, and then the lover was trying to like get you to kill the werewolf, but he was like, I want to kill her. You know what I mean? Like,
there's like this manipulation that happens. It's so much more deep. Yeah. So I highly recommend The Witcher 3. It's something I've always wanted to go back and play a second time through again, but especially once I got a PS4
I just want
Pro.
I want to play the hearts of, like, because I've played through the entire game, and it is a 100+ hour investment just to get through the main story of the game. So it's a long one to consider replaying. However, I have wanted to go back and do the expansions, because the expansions add another about 40 hours of content each.
Yeah. Yep. They're huge.
That you can... That it's almost like you could revisit it and be like, it'd be almost like playing a sequel, but through DLC. Yeah, I mean, I'm the same. Witcher 3. I have played The Witcher 2. I played like the first 2 or 3 hours of it and just didn't hook me. But yeah, The Witcher 3 did hook me in the way that Witcher 2 didn't. I've always thought about going back and playing The Witcher 2 after 3, but it is an old game, and its age shows when you play it. It's also very confusing because it does kind of pick up with you to kind of sort of expect to understand the lore that I didn't know it was a book series at the time, but I assumed that it's Witcher 2 picks up in the middle of something crazy happening, and it's like, who are these characters? Who are these people? What's going on? And it's like, oh, I suppose I should have played the first game. In this case, it was not one that was an easy, seamless transition between the games. I didn't feel the same way about 3, though. 3 actually did give you the context that you needed to pick it up and play it for the first time, as many people did.
Mm-hmm.
And that was done much better in the third game than the second game. But still, so that's all just to say that even though I have played the second game, The Witcher 3 is also my favorite as well. And for many of the reasons that you listed, I like how it does as a book to video game adaptation. And you can tell that we had an episode recently on lore, and I think the way that The Witcher handles lore is great because it weaves the lore of the monsters you're hunting into the actual like narrative and story of each individual quest. So Geralt will have conversations with people and be like, oh yeah, with this monster you're going to want to do this, like we're going to need to go collect this plant or whatever to poison it because it's allergic to it or whatever. And then you can like look and read, it like compels you to look and like read all the entries on the monster you're hunting because you feel like a monster hunter. It's not just like it's not just go kill this dragon or whatever. It's like, no, you actually want to research and find out what the dragon's weak to so you can plan your approach.
And then it goes one level deeper down to the actual mechanics where you craft the oils you need to coat your sword. And there's certain types of sword, silver or not silver sword, to like use. And then there's certain styles combat styles you can use. And there's magic systems. There's like 3 different types of magic you can use. And so there's different incantations you want to use. And you kind of learn all that. So I like how it goes full circle. It goes from the lowest level, which is the gameplay mechanics, all the way to the highest level, which is the abstract lore that you find elsewhere outside of the game. And they're all connected. I love that. It's a whole through line.
Well, we've pretty much also answered how CD Projekt Red has brought innovation to the industry, but do you want to elaborate further?
There's more.
I mean, sure.
Yeah. So when you were talking about how CD Projekt Red started by pirating games, kind of, and bringing them in, they also realized that DRM, digital rights management, is not a way to stop piracy. So they thought their way to stop piracy was to entice people to buy their games by way of the extras they pack in. And so it wasn't just a disc or a file. It was like art and story and thank you letters. And you can see that when you go buy a copy of The Witcher 3 now, that it comes packed with here's a soundtrack CD, here's a map, here's a thank you letter for buying our game, and like showing appreciation and respecting the purchase of a person to buy your game. And they've continued that through even today. It's like, that's what GOG gave. When I go back to what I was talking about, good old games, when they give you all the extra stuff, it's one thing to like not approve of digital rights management as a way to stop piracy, but they give you actual incentives to buy their products. And I think that's fantastic. So that's unique and innovative in our industry, where we're getting farther and farther away from physical media, where everything is just a file. It's just a download. Everything's going digital. There's 2 new consoles coming out with no disk drives. So like, what are you going to get when you buy CyberPunk? Are you going to get a digital soundtrack? Probably. Some avatars? Probably. Like, they're going to start figuring out ways and innovate new things to pack with their games so that you don't just get the game. You get all this extra cool stuff too.
Yeah.
They've also innovated in a way where they've made their own engine. It's called the Red Engine. And the first Red Engine came out with The Witcher 2, and then they've iterated on it. So there's Red Engine 2, which continued the Xbox 360 port of The Witcher 2, used Red Engine 2, and then there's Red Engine 3, which was used for The Witcher 3, and now Red Engine 4 for Cyberpunk 2077. So they've continued to stay in-house, non-published. They're using their own stuff, and they just have this like unique kind of, you can tell by watching gameplay footage of The Witcher 3 and then current footage of Cyberpunk 2077. And if you watch both, they have that flavor that you get from an engine. Now, we've had an episode, we talked at length about game engines. You can go Google 80-bit pod smash game engines, and we'll talk about like why that might be. And so you can see that they bring that to the industry as well. But their big innovation, their big push was really just like these extra pack-ins and how they have such respect and high regard for all of the extra things that come with video games, not just the files themselves.
For sure. And I mean, and even in the games themselves, like, you can tell they've really made a name for themselves from their, I'll use the word generosity, but the idea, they've really been pioneering the pro-consumer mentality, which has actually made them very highly regarded and made them, quote, good guys in the gaming industry. Now, I will elaborate a little further a little later as to how that can be misleading in its own way. But at the very least, in a decade where we've had a rise in these quote anti-consumer, practices, loot boxes, microtransactions, predatory practices, cutting major chunks out of the game and re-releasing it as DLC, pre-order, nonsense, and pre-order incentives and all that stuff. Like all these things that gamers have been complaining are anti-consumer practices, just designed to make a buck and cheat the players out of their hard-earned cash, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. CD Projekt Red has made a name for themselves with these games as being against that. If you buy a copy of The Witcher, you actually get all of this DLC content for free. You get costumes, you get gear, you can get all this stuff just completely free in the game. And then not to mention the paid content you can buy, the Heart of Stone expansion and the Blood and Wine for The Witcher 3, they're basically games, like full-fledged like pieces of content themselves. They are longer. Just these DLCs are longer than some entire games. So they've really made a name for themselves as being very pro-consumer, and therefore, people have come to respect them a lot because if you're going to pay for a CyberPunk game, you're, like you said, you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck. Or not CyberPunk. If you pay for a CD Projekt Red game, you're going to get bang for your buck, which is great in this day and age, of gaming. We want to know that we're going to get our value's worth, especially as games are going up in price, et cetera, et cetera. They are very, very innovative in that regard, and just their pro-consumer practices. And you can tell that comes from their, like you said, pirating, selling games on the street, be free of the man kind of mentality that they are founded on. It really is like, let's do right by our players for the industry's sake. And you always see Cyberpunk's always congratulating their contemporaries with fun fan art, when the one that comes to mind is when Horizon Zero Dawn dropped, and they dropped they had their artists doing a little Facebook post showing Geralt of Rivia high-fiving Aloy. It's always cute, kind of little crossover things that they do with their stuff, and I think that's great.
Yep, and we're seeing that in Cyberpunk 2077, if you've been following their Nightwire presentations, where every single character in the game has an entire life story written. Whether you actually hear the dialogue in the game that shows it off or not, that character has an entire context for their whole life. So it could just be a random NPC that like is selling you a potion, and that NPC has from birth, okay, maybe they were adopted, or maybe they suffered or went through their parents' divorce, separation, or maybe one of their parents were killed, and that context has shaped their childhood. And then they found themselves like trying to make ends meet, struggling in the slums, and like work their way up through business. And now you're seeing this person who's in like a high-end corporate building in a suit, but he's got this back end to him. And whether or not you actually learn that in the game is irrelevant. What you get is the context of his character presented through that lens, in the voice acting, in the writing, in every little detail. And that is every single character in Cyberpunk. And that is amazing to me. That is fascinating. And you just don't get that level of detail written.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, and it does kind of remind me of Red Dead Redemption in that regard, because Red Dead Redemption was sold as this living world where stuff happens, whether you're around to see it or not, but it all feeds into this idea that like there's a world going on beyond just what your character is doing. So yeah, Cyberpunk, gosh, Cyberpunk is looking to be very promising and exciting. I can't wait to get my hands on it. It's so sad that it was delayed. We wanted to do this episode the week it dropped, but it was in fact delayed for a few more weeks. We'll have to wait a few more weeks. So I want to talk really quickly, instead of this question that we normally have where we talk about like CD Projekt Red isms, things where that often show up in their games, but considering like, okay, right now the answer will be Geralt of Rivia, because they only have one franchise. It's unique. Let's scrap this question and instead just sort of talk about we'll talk a little bit about the controversy of crunch and how it applies, how it's been brought to the forefront because of CD Projekt Red's delays and Cyberpunk's quote-unquote fraught development. Then we'll talk a little bit about that. So what's going on with CD Projekt Red in the last year that has kind of brought them into the headlines?
Yeah, what's his name? I want to say it was Andreas Sapkowski, but maybe I'm mistaken. The leader of CD Projekt
Andres
Red.
was the author of the actual book, so he's not affiliated
that's definitely not
with
it.
CD
You're right.
Yep.
I knew that. We talked about this. I want to find the guy's name. Here we go. The CD Projekt Red CEO, Adam Kicinski, initially had promised that they weren't going to crunch this game, that they were going to take the time that they needed to make it, and they were going to do it right. And that was, I don't know how many months ago, maybe more than months and maybe a couple years ago. But since that has been announced as the game approached going gold, that there was going to be several weeks of crunch. And it was made known that, one, he was transparent. So he confessed that he didn't want to do that, but he has to. And so with that, every hour worked amongst their team was going to be paid. And they also promised a substantial bonus for every single individual in the company across the board. Regardless of position or class or anything, you were going to get I believe it's like a 10% of the game's profit bonus. Don't quote me on that exact figure. So, in contrast to, this is where we disagree, because you and I have had discussions about this whole crunch thing. It came out in detail by Jason Schreier's reporting at Bloomberg, which I love. I'm glad he went through and did this expose and talked about crunch and what's going on as a culture. It is a systemic issue that happens in the gaming industry. It stems into other entertainment or creator type industries, such as the movie industry and the author book writing industry, comic books, etc. Anywhere you're creating things, there's deadlines, and you're creating, and you have to push, and you have to work really hard. And these developers have been working really, really hard. And again, this guy, the CEO, came out and said, didn't want to do this, but I'm definitely paraphrasing. I'm just giving you guys the idea. But here it is, and here we are. It saddens us to do it, but everyone's getting paid, and substantial bonuses promised. We're going to give you guys the best game there is. Now there's a 21-day delay, which is a little bit more sad, because you would think, some of the pressure is released from the team. But no, it really just means that there's going to be 21 more days of even harder crunch to December 10th when this game gets released. So it does kind of seem controversial. The bright side of that is everyone's going to stand to get a $50,000-ish bonus. They're all working ridiculously hard. There have been accounts on both ends where there are suffering developers who are saying, we need to get the word out that this is happening and this is an issue. We need to shed light on this. That's one end of the developer's perspective. And then some of the other employees are like, please be quiet. Don't bring attention to this. I want to make this money. This is amazing. I'm getting paid so much extra cash, and this bonus is going to set us up. Like, the median income in Poland is like $20,000 a year, and their single one-time payout bonus is going to be more than double that, plus the hours they're working and the amount of money they'll make as software developers, etc. So they're standing to make a ridiculous amount of money. So you have this controversy that comes up because you're at odds, and both ends of the spectrum collide, where you want to care about workplace culture and workplace mentality, and you want to care for your employees. But at the same time, those are very passionate creators that want to make a great product, and they're willing to put that work in to make that money, like we would. I think anybody would. And so you can't fault them for that either. And so it's just become this mess, and we're on both sides, and I don't really know where we fall on it, but it has drawn a lot of attention to CyberPunk in a negative way that I think personally is a little too negative because of narrative bias, but that is where we stand.
Yeah, I think it's nuanced. I mean, and that's the problem. Part of the problem with everything today, internet discourse, period, is does not leave a lot of room for nuance, despite the fact that nuance does exist and should be paid attention to. I think I'll address this I'll address this at the start. I'll say, for one, part of the controversy, I think, stems from the fact that CD Projekt Red was more than happy to accept the praise when they announced that they were not crunching, and, wanted to seem to try to sidestep the criticism when they had to announce that there was crunch. The other thing that came out of this is that, it wasn't suddenly oh man, our developers have been only working 40-hour work weeks, and now we're going to have to ask them for the last push to just work on weekends. It was it came out later that many of the developers no, we've been crunching for months now, months and months and months and months and months. So this was just this was CD Projekt Red. It was about to leak, and so CD Projekt Red tried to get ahead of it and spin the narrative in a way that was beneficial for them. That was not true. I do think so. There's that aspect of it where it's like you need to accept the criticism that comes your way, and he did. To be fair, he said, "I will accept the consequences of it. I will take ownership of it." And so I have a little bit of respect there, but it's just like, no, you need to, like you do. If you're going to say that, you need to actually do it. Accept the fact that like your game's going to be criticized for contributing to workplace crunch culture. And then, trying to downplay it and minimize it and spin it in such a way where it seemed less bad than it actually was, is also frustrating. I do sympathize with the people who want to make money. But if like to those same employees, I would challenge them to say like, okay, great. You want that payout. That's awesome. That's like, cool. Go get that money. Your coworker who hasn't seen his kid awake in, a month, like have some sympathy for him who wants a little bit of time to like invest in his family. You know what I mean? Like life is not all about money. And so like, it's greedy to demand that someone that it's one thing if you volunteer to work overtime to make more money. It's a whole nother thing when you say, I want to make this money, so you have to work overtime. That's exactly it doesn't matter if it happens from the peer level or if it happens from the C level employees. That's the problem of crunch is someone is saying you have to work overtime so that I can make money. That's a problem, period. No matter how it's happening or where it's happening. So again, the reason I said we'll bring it up later is we'll bring it up now. CD Projekt Red has cultivated this very pro-consumer image that makes them good guys and enables them to sidestep some of this controversy because they're going to have a rabid fan base who are more than happy to come to their aid and come to their defense in a way that companies like BioWare and Activision Blizzard don't have that same luxury because they've alienated their fan base for so long. And they too have their fans that are willing to, voraciously defend them. But because they have this reputation of being anti-consumer, there are a lot of fans out there who are happy to throw those companies under the bus. Whereas there are fewer of them. And you saw it happen. You saw it happen in real time. Widely, highly respected names in the gaming industry came and just started crapping on Jason Schreier for bringing attention to it. Like, Shut your mouth. CD Projekt Red are the good guys. Never, ever should games, especially like voices in the gaming industry, never, ever should they do that and try to silence someone because of a reputation. Like, everyone is subject to criticism when they make bad choices and when they hurt other people. And that's mostly where I've landed with the whole controversy is like CD Projekt Red makes great games. I am looking forward to the game that's coming out, and I am looking forward to all the fruits of all the to personally benefiting from the fruits of all the hard work that developers put in, either willingly or not. At the same time, this is where nuance comes in and compartmentalization. I can say that at the same time as saying, I also want to demand better from the people who are making the games. I also want to allow the voices, and the voices of those developers should be heard and should be stood up for, because it's one thing to be pro-consumer, but like you should strive to be pro-developer as well, because pro-developer leads to better games for the consumer. So I do want both. I want my companies to be both.
I'm going to quote a very short quote from Schreier's article about, I think, what you're trying to get at when it comes to crunch culture. It kind of extends beyond just one company's instance within their one game. But anyone who's experienced, this is the quote, anyone who's experienced or written about crunch culture knows that it doesn't have to be, quote, mandatory to be mandatory. When an office embraces crunch, you're in there constantly, working nights and weekends because it's what's expected of you. Sometimes your boss will tell you to stay late, but often it just happens. Maybe you're given too many tasks to finish in 8 hours, or maybe you just don't want to be the first person out the door. And that right there, that kicker, that maybe you don't want to be the first person out the door, that is the team and the company's culture. So this is, I think, what was at play with Rockstar, especially when they were talking about how your boss is walking around to make sure your butt is in a chair. And if you're the first person out the door, suddenly you're perceived as a weak link. Yep. And you are not a team player. And so there's a culture around where there's nothing in writing.
And your employees are going to gossip about you and everything. Right. It's just going to be
it's just this culture around it. Yeah, it's like a soft soft skill. I don't know how to say it without like your boss doesn't require this. It's not written in your job description. There's not like you must charge this many hours. It must be documented. There's none of that. It is all just this kind of like feeling emotional stress that's put on the whole team to the point where all of a sudden you don't feel like it's okay to walk out first that night. And let someone else be the first one to walk out that night so that you're not the one that looks like you're trying to leave early or, blow the whole project or, I'm not a team player. I care more about something outside this work and then make everyone else hate you. Like you said, workplace drama can kick up, gossiping can kick up, but this isn't specific to just CD Projekt Red. It could be happening there. It very well could be. And it happens across all. That is the crunch culture that Schreier is trying to call out.
Yeah,
and that is the benefit of this article.
And every time, yeah, absolutely. And every time it comes out, no matter who's doing it, or so like if it's happening, then it's contributing to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's
propagating that. Yep.
Right. Like that said, I also understand, and I can again understand the nuance here. It doesn't happen overnight. Like it doesn't fix itself overnight. Like this is going to be something that's going to have to be worked for and fought for the next decade, quite frankly, maybe more. There are things that can help, you know what I mean? Like unionization, I think, is a good push. The closer we can get to an actual video game workers union, then the better off these developers will be. Those are steps that are more effective than boycotts. You know what I mean? Like boycotts are usually very short-lived and ineffective in the long-term consideration. But being vocal in support of things like game unions, those are better steps. Contributing to the people who are making efforts to do those things. If you are incised by this, those are good. The unions aren't end-all be-alls, and unions can be fraught with their own problems. But it's a good first step to try to get a voice for the voiceless in this case, or for the people who don't feel like they have voice. And yes, supporting the journalists who are doing this work, I think is good. But again, this isn't something that just happens overnight. So the fact that the C-level employees, the heads of CD Projekt Red, are sympathetic to the idea of crunch and reducing it, that's also a good thing. And so their efforts should also be applauded, and they should be given some level of, sympathy and understanding when they have deadlines they're trying to make and failing to make, quite frankly. And do need that extra boost out of their employees when they've had a culture of crunch for the last 5, 10, 15 years. It is something that is I can at least sympathize with them, that it's not something that they can just change overnight and will take a lot longer for them to really bake into their culture and bake into their systems. But yes, so that is our soapbox. We'll finish on a lighter note and ask the question, what would you like to see more or less of CD Projekt Red in the future that is not necessarily related to their company practices and more related to the kinds of games they're putting out?
Oh, I was going to say a company practice thing in there real fast that we are going to see.
Fine.
It's something I like to see, and we will, and that is a free next-gen upgrade for The Witcher 3. If you own it, you can upgrade to the Xbox, PlayStation family of consoles, whichever version you currently own, for nothing. You just get that. Also, if you own any version of The Witcher 3, Switch, PS4, you can get the PC version on goodoldgames.com, GOTY.com. You can get it anywhere else. So, you just buy it once, you pretty much have it anywhere you want. That's amazing to me, and that's something that I'd love, and I hope CD Projekt Red continues with CyberPunk. I know you're getting the next-gen upgrades for free as well. So PS5 and Xbox Series X upgrades are coming in 2021 at some point, and we're going to get those for nothing. That's awesome. And I think that is a testament to who they are, and I hope other developers continue to follow that path. I'm glad they're setting an example and they're being out there for it. I would love to see new IP from them, completely from the ground up. They bought The Witcher from a book writer, and they did amazing with it, and they're taking the cyberpunk world, and they bought it from a desktop RPG game, and they're running with it. Tabletop, sorry. And I want to see them do something completely on their own. That's just a complete original idea. And I want it to blow the socks off of Elder Scrolls and Dragon Age and just set the world on fire and be a new tentpole. They've already set that up. That's what The Witcher is. That's what Cyberpunk's going to be already. They're already going to be pushing the envelope in storytelling and gaming in general. Cyberpunk's going to change gaming, the future of what open world storytelling RPG games can do and accomplish. It is a full Grand Theft Auto style game with the quality of The Witcher 3 and the storytelling depth therein combined. It's going to be amazing, and I hope they can continue to iterate on that, and I hope they can do something in their own world with their own IP.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add. I think that there's still, all things considered, when it comes to the games they've put out, they've been around for a while, but they haven't done much. So as far as I'm concerned, they are a very promising, untested developer when you get down to brass tacks.
A lot of untapped potential there.
Yeah, and so I just want to see them to continue to put out quality games at this point, and glad they're branching. I mean, if we had done this developer profile, when we first started the podcast before CyberPunk was properly announced, I would have said, I want to see them do something beyond The Witcher, but now they are doing that. I think we've mentioned the controversy and we've mentioned the controversy with Andrei Seprakowski. We mentioned it before in the podcast, how he did demand more money from them, and they did end up settling that, and they did end up giving him more money, which is great. Happy for him. I remember that when we talked about that controversy, it was weighed in on by my favorite author, Brandon Sanderson, who said any author should be thrilled to have a video game company with the caliber, who makes the caliber of games as CD Projekt Red, adapt their work. And in fact, if CD Projekt Red wants to adapt any of my stories, I will sign the rights over to them for free. So in that vein, I would love to see CD Projekt Red adapt one of my favorite Sanderson books. Specifically, I think they would do an awesome job with Mistborn. But other than that, I'm not quite sure. That is a flight of fancy at this point in games that could possibly exist. But if we ever get a CD Projekt Red developed Mistborn game, you can not only have my money, but I will. It'll be my new religion, I guess. I don't know. I'll convert.
Yeah, there you go. It might as well be as often as you talk about it.
That's true. Yep.
Hey yo.
Hey yo. All right, so that's the show. That's CD Projekt Red. We hope you had a good time listening about them and learning about them. If you have thoughts, if you love CD Projekt Red, if you hate CD Projekt Red, if you love The Witcher, hate The Witcher, if you're excited about CyberPunk, if you think CyberPunk can go eat it, we want to hear those thoughts, and Termite here will tell you where you can share that all with us.
The best place you can start finding us is 80bitpodsmash.com, where there are links to all of our social media avenues, Facebook, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Reddit. There should be a subreddit created for this topic. We can talk about it at length if you would like. There's links to our Discord server in all of our show notes. You can find us there, interact with us live. That's the best places for you to interact with us. If you are wanting more podcast places for us to be, our platforms are all listed at 80bitpodsmash.com, where you can find even the RSS feed to throw into any third-party app. If we're not somewhere you want us to be, let us know. Reach out to those spots, and continue to follow us on twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash, where we have our news show every Monday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, and our video game streams every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. Monday and Wednesday, 8 p.m. both nights. Pretty easy schedule to follow. So check us out, twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash. Subscribe to us at those platforms to make sure you're alerted to whenever we create new content, whenever we go live, and keep in touch with whatever we're doing. Because sometimes I do surprise streams, like I did on Halloween when I played Luigi's Mansion 3. And no one knew about that until the day of, because I posted it on social media and I did it. So it was a great time had by all. I want you guys to all jump in on the fun. Give us your thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, and ideas.
Awesome, sweet. Next week will be the week of Thanksgiving, and we know that for many of you, this is going to be a difficult year, challenging year. Things have changed, and your celebration may not be what you normally expect, but we will be the one consistent thing. You can always count on us for a Pod Smash episode on Thanksgiving that loosely relates in some way to Thanksgiving, trying to combine that idea with video games. And so since football is such a crucial part of the Thanksgiving experience for many Americans, we decided we would do a long overdue genre deep dive on sports games.
EA Sports.
It's
in the game.
It's in the game. Neither of us are particularly sports gaming people, but we will do our best to do the genre justice as we do in our deep dives. So look forward to us talking about sports for Thanksgiving next week.
All right. Well, I guess that leaves us for the end of our current episode of 8-Bit Pod Smash, so we will see you next week.